Hi, Rachel. How are you today?
Doing well. How are you, James?
Well, the news is flooded with this President Calderon. What's going on over there?
Well, as we've all heard on the news, Calderon came in front of Congress bashing our Second Amendment and blaming lawful Americans and our gun freedoms on the violence and blaming our freedoms here in this country for the violence and the murder and the mayhem that's going on in Mexico. And we think this is absolutely outrageous, but it's not the first time that we've heard this, and it's not the first accusation that President Calderon has had. He's accused the Second Amendment and the gun laws in this country for his violence and his problems for a year, more than a year now, and we find that outrageous and offensive.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. Actually, I didn't get to see his whole speech or presentation. I don't know if he referred to supposedly guns going across the border. Rachel, did he make some remark about that, or did he stay pretty general?
He did make that remark, and he also called for a renewal of the semi-auto ban that was allowed to sunset in 2004, which was completely, it had no effect on crime. It was ineffective completely. It was a complete failure of a gun ban, and he called for a renewal of that. But let's be honest here. President Calderon wants to point fingers at the United States for his problems, but the only person and the only government to be responsible for the problems in Mexico is the Mexican government. The government itself is corrupt, the military is corrupt, the law enforcement in Mexico is corrupt, so I don't know how they're accusing lawful, law-abiding, honest Americans for their problems in Mexico. The only place that Mexico can look for a solution is in Mexico.
Exactly, and I do have a story here, and if I'm not mistaken, it comes from The Hill itself, the publication, and they are referring to that the 150,000 Mexican troops that deserted from the Army also took their weapons with them, and we did legally sell those weapons to the Mexican government. So, you know, if they're trying to correlate this like they did months ago, it's kind of pretty much of a fallacy. Now, we know that there probably were some guns that were taken across the border into Mexico, but you know, Mexico is one of those areas where I think I think the strongest weapon you can probably own down there is an air gun. So yeah, probably were some guns smuggled across the border, but certainly not enough for a war. And I think a lot of these facts are overlooked, and you know, I can understand why he probably would like to point fingers at us, because he is failing so poorly.
Well, you're right. And actually, the numbers that he gives are just wrong. He says that 80% of the guns recovered are traced back to the United States. That's wrong. The Mexican government is not sharing all of the information with the United States, and they're also picking out American-made guns and saying that these are the guns that can be traced. Well, of course, the traceable guns in the United States would be a high number. That's just outrageous to say that guns that look like they're from America are traced back to America. That's obvious, but they're getting so many firearms from China, from Russia, from the black market, from other countries. That's where the problem is. But it's not the semi-automatic firearms that are possessed by lawful Americans that are the problem. It's the RPGs. It's the armored tanks and helicopters and fully automatic firearms that the Mexican drug cartels possess. It's not the semi-automatic firearms that people are purchasing at gun shows in Texas. It's absolutely outrageous. It's a diversion plot to make people think that it's America's problem when it's not. It's not the Second Amendment, and it's not America's gun laws or the lawful Americans who possess firearms in this country that are the problem. It's the Mexican drug cartels. It's the problems that are birthed in Mexico, and they need to find a solution that's birthed in Mexico as well.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, Reggie. You and I both know that if you're the head of a cartel, why would you pay retail or better prices and try to get something across the border when you know perfectly well you can pick up the phone, you can contact international gun smugglers, buy these guns for a dime on a dollar, and they'll fly them to you. They'll give them to you almost. So the whole thing is a cooked up idea to begin with, and we're not getting all the facts, and that could be we're not getting all the facts because we have an administration that is also anti-gun. But I don't want to say anybody's in cahoots here, but there certainly isn't enough facts out there being given to the American public. And I'm sorry, I mean, I understand that the president of Mexico is doing a job out there to end that cartel problem, and I hope that he does. I mean, I haven't been to Mexico in years because of this. I want them to end this, but I don't want them blaming me for it. It's not my fault.
You're right. And we've had Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Attorney General Eric Holder giving press conferences in Mexico calling for renewal of a semi-automatic ban. This is outrageous. It's not American gun owners' issue. It's not their fault. It's not their problem. And it's not American gun laws that are causing the problems. When you have the corruption that is at an all-time high within the government all the way down to law enforcement in Mexico, that's the problem. And President Calderon, with all due respect, should be paying attention to his own staff and his own people in Mexico and keeping corruption at bay if you're going to really make a difference with all of the violence that's happening across our border.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I really enjoy Mexico. I would love to be able to tell people to go back there and hunt, go down to the beach, do whatever you like to do in Mexico. I'd like to be able to endorse that idea, but we need more from the president in Mexico to cure some of these problems and stop blaming us for the problem.
That's right.
Okay. You know what? I know this is going to be an ongoing thing again, as most of our conversations are, but we've got to clear this thing up, and I know that you'll keep us informed on anything new that takes place down there. I hope we get some better news in the future, Rachel.
Well, the good thing is that there is not a lot of support for gun bans within the United States Congress, and that's because Americans don't agree with gun bans either. So we need to just keep contacting our legislators to make sure they know how we feel, and we need to register to vote to make sure that pro-gun legislators are in office.
Yeah, and I really feel sorry for the people who live in Mexico. They're not able to protect themselves, and they're in a situation that's a no-win deal unless the president does something about it down there. The Mexican president, possibly our president as well, but certainly the responsibility lies at his door, and he needs to solve that problem. I want to go to Mexico. Come on, get over this thing. Solve it and stop blaming us for it.
That's right. We want to make sure that our rights are not eroded because of problems in another country.
Exactly. Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate you coming on. See you again next week.
Thank you.